Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Underground. So today I wanted to do something new, or rather, something old mixed with the new. For those of you who've been following us for a while, you know that I used to do these sort of PowerPoint Intel updates a while back. Last year, I kind of stopped doing them in favor of doing some of the more short and sweet wire reports. So now that I've gotten that kind of going and gotten that into my workflow a little bit better, I wanted to kind of take the opportunity to change things around a little bit and increase the efficiency of what I do and offer something else additional for you guys. So here's the plan, for now at least. My plan is to continue the wire reports Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so 5 days a week. And then on Saturday, I'm going to stop doing a Saturday wire, and I'm going to stop doing the wire roll-up text version, and I'm going to substitute it with this. So this will be a good GRINTSUM, graphic intelligence summary, roll-up, Saturday report, all in one. So this is going to allow me to do a couple of things. One, it allows me to more easily convey my sources because I can drop the slides for you guys to take a look at and you can see what sources I'm using. And usually by Saturday, if there's a source that I'm working with that's a little bit like sketchy or not, I mean, I'm always working with public information, of course, but if it's a little bit unconfirmed or something, we can iron these details out by Saturday. Use Saturday as a way to refresh what happened during the week, kind of maybe refresh our memory as to some of the things that occurred throughout the week. And it also allows me to have a little bit more of a graphical experience here. I can talk about things more in depth. You guys know the drill, right? So that's what this is I'm going to try to do this moving forward. Of course, this is a lot more work on my end. It's not that much more work. I don't think it'll be too bad. But it is an additional 4 hours of content for you guys a month, more or less. So hopefully most of the work will be done throughout the week, and on Saturday we can take some time to get a little bit more in depth. So hopefully this will be helpful for some of you who prefer maybe the long form content, a little bit more detail, a little bit more, graphics to kind of go along with things. Hopefully this will help you guys out quite a bit. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. And right up front, we have the Northeast region. So for this region for now, the only thing that I have of note that kind of, caught my eye this week was the passing of House Bill 6090. Now, this has, of course, gone around the internet, and people are kind of freaking out about it because of what's contained in the bill. So, of course, I don't want to go into too much detail because this is a House bill, right? So, it passed the House. Now it's in the Senate. There can be changes. It can be kicked back to the House for more changes. I don't think it will. I think it's going to pass just like it is, which is kind of concerning. So for those of you who aren't aware of what Bill 6090 is, I would encourage you to just read it. Just read it yourself. Don't take it from me. Don't read somebody's opinion on the internet about it. Read the bill yourself. Just drop it into an internet search browser and read it right from the congressional webpage because it's pretty clear. One of the biggest contentions that I have with the bill is definitions, of course. For those of you who are unaware as to some of the little slippery tricks politicians like to use on all sides, politicians on all sides use this, but this is something that has become a huge problem, which is basically handing the keys to the castle over to a third-party group. And this is where the majority of the problems lie. So imagine for a moment if the United States government wrote a bill, Congress wrote a bill and passed a bill that stated that China's view, a Chinese company's view, let's just say TikTok or something like that. Whatever TikTok decides should be banned, will be banned under U.S. law. That sounds a little extreme, doesn't it? It sounds a little bit crazy. Whatever China determines to be bad will be banned as far as speech goes. So that's exactly what happens underneath this bill. It allows a third-party agency, a third-party company, group, NGO, whatever you want to call it, with very strong ties to another nation, if you know what I mean. It allows that group to change the definitions of things. So the bill is passed and nothing happens, right? Because the definition hasn't been written yet. But in the future, if this company, agency, NGO, whatever, wants to say, all right, this speech is now banned, well, the law, because they have been given authority under it, that's a problem. So That's one of the major concerns for this bill, is that not that the bill itself outright bans speech. It gives authority to another group. It adopts that group's definitions of things. It adopts that group's standards of things in order to make that speech illegal. So, huge problem in my opinion, especially considering another bill which you should definitely look into, which is Bill 7921. This one was introduced before this bill, so it's a classic case of you got two bills, okay? Bill 1 and Bill 2. You decide to pass Bill 2 first, and Bill 2 contains language that refers to Bill 1, and so you pass Bill 2. Everyone freaks out. The White House can then say, "Oh no, this is all not real. Look, there's nothing in this bill that's nefarious. It just says definitions and things like that. It links to other things, but there's nothing there, right?" And then so Community Notes goes crazy over it, saying, "Oh, this isn't in the bill." Well, no, it's not. That line is directly not in the bill, but that line is said by the agency quoted in the bill. So then we get bills that like 7921, which then basically outline the procedures for education systems. So defining who and what definitions get used in education or re-education. So again, pretty scary times when it comes to speech. Even if it doesn't matter what your political views are, it doesn't matter what your stances are on foreign policy or anything. If you're paying taxes in America, you might want to read this and be a little bit concerned about it. I know there's nothing the American people can do about it because politicians are just going to do what politicians do best and just, not really listen to their constituents. However, something to be mindful of, if nothing else, be mindful of the trickery that's at play here with regards to changing definitions and handing over authority to an NGO to develop the criteria for what's okay and not in the bill. So that's something to be concerned about moving forward. Moving forward into the Southeast region, one item of note that I did want to mention, because the mainstream media has, of course, dropped the story because it doesn't fit either a conservative or liberal narrative, so they've kind of forgotten about it. And that is a police shooting that occurred in Charlotte, North Carolina. So no real information on this one, to be honest. I'm kind of interested into why there were so many agencies involved in this. However, the reason that this story is of note is because it resulted in 4, possibly 5 fatalities. Again, reports are differing. I haven't had time to actually dig down to the bottom of this yet, but at least 4 officers were shot and killed on scene, and I think at least 8 others were wounded, all of which come from differing agencies. Initially, the media said that it was 3 or 4 U.S. Marshals. That is not the case. At least one was a Marshal, but they were on a U.S. Marshal task force. So you'll see that happen quite a lot, actually, mostly because they legally have to bring in a lot of local law enforcement officers onto a task force team so that the feds have jurisdiction in a particular area for a particular task. But again, 4 fatalities, possibly 5. And unfortunately, don't want to call it too soon, but it may be more based on some of the reports I've been reading, based on some of the wounded from this incident. But I did want to mention it because, once again, the media kind of has dropped this story. So again, yeah, not super great. Just kind of highlights some of the unrest that we have going on in the United States. Moving on to the West Central Midwestern region, that's a mouthful. We have another whistleblower death linked to Boeing and Spirit Aerosystems. So Joshua Dean on April 28th succumbed to a series of bacterial infections. He had pneumonia, MRSA, a few other infections, and unfortunately he died in a hospital after being life-flighted to Oklahoma City. Now, Joshua Dean is important because he was a whistleblower and kind of a public complainant with regards to Spirit Aerosystems. So he was alleging over the past couple of years that he was fired by Spirit because he pointed out the construction flaws and assembly flaws with the Boeing 787 Dreamliner project. So Spirit fired him. He, again, turned whistleblower. I think he did testify quite a bit against Spirit. I'm not sure about Boeing directly, but Spirit's a subsidiary of Boeing, so Yeah, this is a kind of a suspicious thing. Again, though, this is a great opportunity to take use of some of that Bayesian analysis and some of that more structured analytical techniques, right? So, just my own thinking, I think that this is pretty suspicious. One whistleblower, okay, anything can happen. You can't really say anything. Two whistleblowers die under mysterious circumstances. He wasn't sick 2 weeks ago, and then suddenly, within just a few days, he's unfortunately dead. So, so this is not something that normally happens. Again, I don't want to, slam the tinfoil hat on too much, but again, if we're trying to use a structured analytic technique, my own Bayesian thinking really strongly indicates something's up here, because you don't typically have high-profile witnesses / whistleblowers, dying in the ways that they did. So, again, this is not something that is a terribly good thing to see. Moving on to the southwestern region, one incident of note, of course there are many, but one that I highlighted in the Wire reports this week, which is the BNSF railway derailment. This was on the Arizona-New Mexico border. Train derailed there as it was crossing, and it was mostly carrying propane and gasoline. So I ended up closing the interstate for a while, and it was kind of a big deal because the fire was quite significant, as you could probably imagine. No indication of what happened, no indication of why it derailed. From the images and from where I think the accident took place, it wasn't in a curve, it was in a straight crossing. Initial police reports did not mention any crossing incident, because normally, okay, first of all, trains derail around the United States all day long. Every day there are many derailings. Almost all of them, however, are very obviously accidental or due to a vehicle stalled on the track at a crossing. I don't know if that occurred here because there haven't really been any details made public, and local journalists are not interested in these kinds of things anymore. So you have a really hard time figuring out exactly where it took place, exactly what happened, and was there anything potentially indicating anything nefarious. So I don't really know what happened, so I just kind of have to keep it on the slide until we know more information. Moving on to the western region. All right, this is a big deal, but maybe not in the ways that you might think. So I highlighted in the Wire something that it was quite scary, okay? And I don't mean for it to be scary, but we've got to be real serious here for a moment. So please forgive me if this seems a little bit maybe far-fetched, but please keep in mind, I am working through this analytically. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm trying to take the information that I have, synthesize it, analyze it, figure out what's going on, and then provide an assessment on it. If that initial data is not changed, I cannot provide an accurate, updated assessment. So with that in mind, let's talk about the UCLA mice incident. This has gone around social media. A lot of it is circular reporting, and what I mean by circular reporting is you've got one source that puts out like a video or a photo, and then 15 or 16 other accounts copy that. They download it from Twitter, or they download it from Snapchat or whatever, and then they repost it underneath their own account. So now you've turned one source into like 15 or 20 sources. This doesn't mean that you now have 15 or 20 sources. You got one source, okay? The primary source that posted the first bit of data, evidence, whatever. That's what you have. You don't have corroborating information. You need another primary source. You don't need a bunch of other reposting accounts. So that's basically what we've got going on. We've got 3 or 4 accounts that have posted information about this entire situation, and a bunch of reposts. Okay, the reposts don't count, right? They don't count as a source. They're a secondary source, if anything. And all of these refer to an individual, unidentified, of course, going up to the main encampment at UCLA and really opening up a black backpack and depositing that backpack basically in the center of like the quad area for UCLA, right? The main kind of grassy structure where this encampment was set up. And inside the backpack were a lot of live mice. The mice immediately scattered into the encampment, and some of the mice were captured by some of the protesters and demonstrators or whatever, and the mice showed very suspicious markings on their backs. Some people immediately said they're injection marks. I don't know that for sure, because again, these people are not bright enough to take really good photos of the mice. So again, we're suffering from a loss of information. In one of the videos provided, there were a couple of security guards in the background that saw the whole incident, so law enforcement does know about this incident. The protesters obviously complained about it to police, but we know how this goes, right? They kind of, ticked off everyone in an authoritative position, so they're not really inclined to be listened to. As far as the physical evidence, that's basically it. I don't know if the red markings were injection marks. Usually you don't see injection marks, even on mice. Some of them look like they had been shaved and maybe a scientific apparatus like surgically implanted onto them at one point, which was now gone, which that may have been the reason for the red mark. I'm not a research scientist, so I can't say what that could have been. It also could have just been a marking. It could have just been a paint mark to mark the mice that were used for this project or so on and so forth. So my risk analysis, my risk management matrix looks a little bit different now, right? Because of this information that we have. Also, my Carver technique just has, alarm bells going off because of the potential severity for the situation. So me looking from the outside in, I feel like I shouldn't have to say this at this point, but I'm going to say it anyway, just for those of you who are not aware. I'm trying to take a neutral standpoint with these demonstrations. I don't support either side or the other. I'm trying to be as neutral and objective as humanly possible, especially when it comes to potentially very, very serious incidents like this. So why is this such worthy of a lot of coverage and a lot of discussion and a lot of text? Like, why is this worth me talking so much about it when no one else cares? That's why. No one else seems to care. The reason that we want to maybe consider this a little bit more is because we have the most likely scenario and we have the most deadly scenario, most dangerous. Most likely COA, most dangerous, or most deadly COA. Now, me being the analyst, right, or trying to be, we have to think in terms of, all right, we're operational, we're on the ground, we're working through issues in real time. If I'm on the ground, boots on ground, and I'm working on this issue, I have to go with the most deadly first, right? This is very common sense when it comes to every other issue in the tactical realm. You assume the most deadly. If you have very little information, you have an indicator, assume most deadly, and then walk it back. Try to walk it back if you have more information. Guy sitting in an observation post out in the middle of the woods radios you in the middle of the night. Hey, I've got 4 aircraft that are headed right towards you right now. Okay. You wake up, you assume that they're there to bomb you or strike you in some way. So that's what you think in that first 30 seconds. That's your assessment. Most deadly, go. You wake up, you go to your talk, you go to your situation, and then you can get some more information in. Oh, okay, well, they're not really coming directly towards you. They're going in a different direction, or they're doing something else. And then you can start to walk your risk back. But in that first 30 seconds, you're putting your kid on, you know what I mean? Same situation with this. If I hear an unidentified person dropped a backpack full of potentially, laboratory experiment, mice, we don't know what or if they have been injected with anything. We don't know anything about the person who did it. But we also know that in this situation, the protesters have ticked off the cops so that no one cares. There's no investigation. They dropped mice off at a place where they know the mice are going to run into the encampment because they've got lots of places to hide. And we know that the encampments, to, not be disrespectful or anything, but they're not the cleanest in the world. These people are very unhygienic, as you can see from a lot of the debris that was left from the clearing of these encampments. Oh, and by the way, the encampments were cleared. So a couple of days after this, everyone has either been arrested or removed from the area. So now you've got a dispersed population. What does that tell me as an analyst? That tells me that someone, an unidentified person, can walk up to a crowd of people, drop off a potential biological device, and within a few days, not only will no one care or investigate, but those people will now be dispersed throughout the United States potentially. So Again, I don't want to, like stoke fear or anything, but hey, this is a big deal. And for me, I don't feel that the burden of proof is on me. I feel like the burden of proof is on the investigators who are being paid with my tax dollars. Do you realize how easy it would be to disprove everything I just said? All they have to do is go and get one of the mice, test it, preferably all of them, but test it and see what there is. The FBI and many other federal agencies, even the National Guard, has laboratories, scientific laboratories all around the United States that do this exact thing, that are meant to test for potential terrorist activities. That's what they do. That's their whole mission, and no one seems to care. No one seems to care about this. Like, I'm the first person to be extremely happy to find out this was just some student at UCLA who's a research student. They had access to a lab. Not easy to get access to a lab. And they were able to grab some of their research subjects, release them into the encampment as a prank or as just some kind of way of stoking fear, propaganda, right? And the propaganda value of this cannot be dismissed. I would be very, very happy to find that out, that this was all just a harmless incident. But never forget, and this is something we absolutely cannot forget, and I'm pleading with you to please, please, please listen to me on this one thing. Even if it is a propaganda or psyop or something, no matter what it is, that doesn't mean that psyop can't kill you. So please do not think, oh, this very severe thing happened in society, this very severe incident happened, it's very obviously a psyop. That doesn't mean that it's not real. Do you see? So this could have been a psyop just to freak out the people in the encampments, because that's exactly what happened, right? All these protesters immediately started talking about it and started freaking out that they were under a biological attack. Great way to stoke fear, and great way to get people to leave the protest for very little cost. All you got to do is go to a pet store, get some mice, make it look like they've been injected with something, and release them. Very efficient and very cheap psyop to get people to leave somewhere. However, because we don't know for sure, we have to go with the most dangerous cola, right? I think it was probably a prank. I think it was probably nothing, but I can't tell you that for sure. And the severity of it is so severe that we need to investigate this, and I'm not seeing anyone investigate it. Either way, the point's moot now, isn't it? Because everybody's been arrested and released, or now they're all at the other protests all around the country. So this is a huge problem of risk management, of Carver technique, of all this kind of analytical thing. And I just feel kind of, like I'm the crazy one here for thinking that this is a concern. But anyway, I did want to kind of show a little bit more information on that. Some other information that I guess we just kind of forgot was all of those Chinese biolabs that were discovered. The main one was in Reedley, California, which I think was up by Fresno, so 2 or 3 hours away from the UCLA incident. But what did they find? They found literally Chinese Communist Party linked biolabs in California illegally conducting experiments on mice with things like Ebola, bubonic plague, yellow fever, these horrific things. There were also some initial reports that they were working on infected lice, which they placed on mice that they were marking. Do you see the concern here? So when you add in this other information, your threat level just goes up through the roof. Now, does this mean that you're going to start walking around with a Tyvek suit and respirator? No. But it does mean that I would really, 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 please and thank you, appreciate some of my tax dollars being used to maybe investigate this a little bit. And that did not happen. So, again, we assume most deadly, and then when we get new information, we walk it back. I love it. I love to walk things back. Please don't think I'm sitting here, trying to be super inflammatory all the time. No, I love to walk things back. I really do. I would love to be relieved. I'm the first person who would want to be relieved that this is just all just nothing, and I'm just wasting my time talking about it. But it hasn't happened. Okay, it hasn't happened. We haven't gotten any information. I haven't seen any press statements from any authority that mention it. There may have been a few, but at this point, it's a moot point. So again, moving forward, what can you do as the average person? Be aware. Be aware. Hone your skills with Bayesian thinking. Learn. Please learn. Please, please, please learn how to use the Carver technique properly. Please learn that. I've seen a few mentions of the Carver technique that are floating around the interwebs, and they're not right. They're unfortunately fairly wrong. So I have a video on the Carver technique if you want to check that out. There's also plenty of blog posts not written by me all over the internet showing you how to use the Carver technique. But again, please re-examine if you've learned that correctly, and try to use that when trying to assess threats to local things in your area. You're probably not going to be able to do it very effectively for somewhere like a place where you don't know the vulnerabilities, because those vulnerabilities are hidden for a good reason. But you can get a pretty good idea. Man, huge crowds, person with a backpack, This time it's mice. Next time, we don't know, right? They can approach. They can approach the encampment. They can they can do whatever they want and then leave. Oh, and by the way, people will be dispersed. So people will be like completely gone from the whole area. They'll be all around the United States, because as we all know through some of the mainstream reporting on this, most of these protesters at these universities aren't local. They're not local. They're not students. They're being paid and flown in to do this. Now, a lot of them are local students, but a lot of them are just paid agitators, right? From one side or the other. Remember, agitators occur on both sides usually. So, again, something to remember when moving forward is please, please, please try to add a little bit more analysis to your thinking. You don't have to do a whole Bayesian analysis math, right? We don't have to break out our notepads and go to work on this, but just think along those lines. Think along those lines of the vulnerabilities. Think along the lines of what someone has learned from this incident. And even if this incident was perfectly innocent, or maybe not totally innocent, like it's still, something pretty nefarious. So it may have not been a, CCP bioterror attack. It could have just been a student. But the more malign actors just learned how far they can go with no one caring, right? With no one paying attention to them. So that's something to definitely keep in mind moving forward. It's not exactly something that a lot of people want to think about because of, kind of how scary it is. But something that I would definitely keep in mind moving forward. So I've talked to death on that, so we'll move on to one of the more, again, interesting incidents that you might want to keep a hold of, even if you don't care. So, and this is, of course, referring to the incident in the Sahel in Niger. Just a quick correction to the Wire report again. Sorry about that. I reported yesterday, I think, in the Wire that the Russians had occupied Base 201. They have not occupied Base 201. They've not moved into the American base there. They've moved into Base 101. So let me explain why I was so wrong on that, so maybe you guys can learn from my mistakes. I saw the report come out, and I think it was a Friday drop. I think that's what it was. I got caught. They got me. They got me with the garbage. So for those of you who don't know how the Pentagon likes to drop stories they don't want people to know about, they call it, and every political regime since the dawn of time has called it, taking out the trash. They drop a bunch of They put a bunch of stories together on Friday afternoon when the reporters are sitting there looking and wanting to begin their weekend, and they nestle all these stories together into one. And into one like press briefing. And when they do that, they hope that nobody pays attention to any one issue. So they kind of try to sneak important stuff out with the garbage. So with this one, this is actually a great learning point, even for somebody like me who's been doing this a while. What they did was very sneaky. And what they did was, this is something that the Pentagon now does routinely and regularly. Okay, the White House used to do it. Now the Pentagon does it routinely. What they'll do is if they have a really bad story to break, if they have like something really bad happens anywhere in the world, what they'll do is they'll leak it first. They'll leak it first, and those 5 or 6 reporters they leak it to will publish it. They will go ahead and publish because the media doesn't care anymore. They'll publish the story, and they'll cite unnamed White House officials or unnamed senior defense official. And they'll wait. They'll wait a couple of hours and see if anybody freaks out. And then the Pentagon will get ready for their briefing, for their press briefing on it, because if people freak out, now they have ammunition, don't they? Now they know what people are freaking out about, and they know how to spin the story. So what they did with this one is they leaked it, and they leaked the story that Russians had occupied an American base. They didn't say which base when they leaked it first. So what they did, so people like me, I got caught, they got me, assumed it was base 201, because who would care about any other base? Well, it wasn't base 201, it was base 101. They're two different bases in Niger. Base 101 is an old fire base, cop, whatever you want to call it. I think we basically just abandoned it last year or year and a half ago. Basically, we definitely, we may have maintained a small force there, but when this whole Niger, military coup took place, we kind of like stepped back from that one. So base 101, there ain't nothing there. And Russia walked into that one. But that's not what the initial report said. It said it occupies an American base. So all the African media runs with, they're at base 201. And they never actually said that in their leak. So then when the Pentagon gets, SecDef Austin gets up there behind the podium, and he says, yes, Russians have moved into base 101 in central Niger, hundreds of miles away from base 201, which is the base we all care about, right? Because there's Americans at it. And people like me look like a fool because I didn't wait. So that's my bad. But it is interesting to see how these things kind of happen, because I thought, man, that was slippery. They got me. Anyway, the Russians are at base 101. It doesn't really change the overall assessment that I wrote, because this is a big deal. Niger doesn't want the United States there. There's quite a few troops still at base 201. Let's see. How should I talk about this? The problem with what's going on in Niger is that there are a lot of public sources, so I can get a decent picture of what's going on the ground, but I don't necessarily want to share that information, even though it's OSINT. I don't want to necessarily share that information because it's a sticky situation on the ground. This isn't Kabul, where everyone and their cousin is talking about it, and we have a pretty good picture all over the internet. This is a situation where this could be a lot worse, because contrary to popular belief, during the Kabul crisis, the Taliban was not our primary enemy during the mission to leave, during that Kabul airport crisis. So if the Taliban knows we're watching them, it doesn't matter, right? If the Taliban knows, oh, hey, Americans are landing, they're landing helicopters at this compound, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is ISIS knowing that, and the CIA operatives that kind of ran that situation. In Niger, the situation is wholly different. Everyone in Niger hates the Americans. The civilians hate Americans. The Nigerian military is looking to kick us out at bayonet point, basically. And now the Russians are involved. So this is not good. Now, I know Americans don't give one hoot about Africa or what's going on in Niger, especially considering, most Americans, I think, feel that we shouldn't have been there in the first place. And finally, we're leaving a place where we should not have been in the first place. Fine, I get it, okay? I'm not concerned about the long-term geopolitical situation. I'm not saying we should stay or leave or whatever. I'm just saying there's an awful lot of Americans on the ground, and we don't have a really good track record for getting out of Africa unscathed, if you know what I mean. Just look at the map and figure out where they're going to go, because there are a few. CENTCOM accidentally leaked a secret report showing all the secret bases we got in Africa a while back, and so everybody knows now that there aren't that many bases within range that are super friendly to the Americans. So getting people out of Niger is going to be a problem, especially considering it's tight quarters now at 201. So this story kind of broke a few weeks ago when a lot of the people who are stationed at base 201 squealed to Congress about their situation, and there's a whole scandal with that. They're running out. They don't have any running water. Food is challenging to get in and out because Niger has basically encircled the position there in Niger, that base 201 in Agadez, out in the northeastern part of the country. So this is it's a sticky situation, and it's only getting worse. I don't care because I care about Niger. I'm just going to say that right out front. Niger is basically a failed state. From an American perspective, at least. But it is important to note this because we have a potential for something very, 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 very bad to happen, and I don't want to see that. So I'm concerned about it, and I'll keep talking about it, and I'll keep doing research on it. so that if we have a Kabul 2.0, it's now the season for embassy evacuations, and the situation in Niamey, at the American embassy in Niamey and at the airport in Niamey, is not good. You just look at a map and you know what I'm saying. This ain't good. So anyway, that's all I have for Niger. Good learning experience all around, especially when it comes to, even if you don't care about Niger, this is interesting to kind of keep an eye on. So wrapping things up with the Middle East, or technically, I guess you'd call it the Mediterranean. And this is one of the developing stories that's kind of broken this week, which is Turkey cutting economic ties with Israel. Now, I personally am kind of skeptical about this because Turkey has a history of claiming, they do a lot of talking. Turkey claims a lot and then they do something else. So Turkey, in the beginning of this, Turkey claimed to kind of restrict the economic ties with Israel, obviously due to the religious political implications of the situation in Gaza, right? Turkey being a NATO member kind of complicates things quite a bit, and Turkey having one foot in Europe and one foot in Asia is complicating as well. But the other day, Turkey announced that they're cutting all economic ties. All trade with Israel is now closed. This includes POL, petroleum, oil, and lubricant production. And for those of you who don't know, Israel gets a lot of oil from Turkey. They get a lot of oil and gas. Maybe it's not so much gas, but a lot of oil through Turkey from Azerbaijan. So this could be a very significant incident if Turkey is genuine. Like I said, Turkey has been caught saying one thing about not cooperating with Israel, and then they go and they supply Israel. People catch on the ship tracking websites, they'll catch Turkish ships leaving with cargo and landing cargo in Israel to supply Israel, and then they'll have another ship landing in Egypt to supply the Palestinians. So Turkey a lot of times plays both sides of the issue with regards to these sorts of things, like many other nations, as we know. But if Turkey has indeed shut down trade with Israel, this could be a problem for Israel. So, anytime Israel gets pushed into a corner, bad things tend to happen. So, again, something to keep an eye on moving forward. So that's all I have for today. I think we'll call it a day on that. There are many more things that have, of course, occurred, but this is what I mentioned in the Wire reports this week. And this is kind of a good way to get our feet wet again by doing some of these briefings. Again, sources are in the slides. The slide decks will be available wherever I can host it. So Patreon will allow me to attach it. You should be able to see it even if you're not, even if you're not subscribed or anything. So that's a good file hosting option. I don't entirely know. I'll try to hang it anywhere I can with regards to that, so you guys can get a clickable link that makes it a little easier. But again, this is what we have for today. Thank you all for hanging in there. We'll see how these things go. Hopefully this will be something that has a lot of value added and is not just something that's kind of redundant or repetitive. And hopefully we can continue this well into the future. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for your support. I really do mean it. I would not be able to do any of this stuff. I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff unless you guys supported me and found value in doing this. So thank you for that. I really do hope it helps, and I guess we'll see you next time. So as always, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. And as always, fight in the shade.